the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9.
Hello, and welcome to the HBR Talk 336. Sorry, I just just saw the chat. I'm like, they don't realize who they have previously called, is what I'm seeing, and I have, like, no idea now what this is about. And now I'm curious. Oh God, telemarketers. That's perfect because we're talking about the Biden family again. So welcome to HBR Talk 336. Moron, the Bafia, friends of the family.
Thank you for joining us tonight instead of going and watching the Sugar Bowl.
Oh God, I didn't even know that was going on.
Neither did I. I'm referencing Biden's latest gaffe. He was
see.
"Oh, I got to talk about this terrorist attack, but I want to watch the Sugar Bowl." That was him trying to say Super Bowl.
Good grief!
Oh.
I didn't even realize the Super Bowl was this. Wait.
Neither did I. I'm very much captured by the various terrorist events.
That
happening
can't
across
be right.
this country.
The Super Bowl is a Sunday game.
Well, I don't know what Biden meant when he said Sugar Bowl, but apparently he'd rather get to that than address the nation regarding these various terrorist attacks.
Yeah, the Sugar Bowl is a real thing. It's an actual. Yeah, I was like, I thought it was, but holy crap. Well, yeah, that's definitely not the thing to talk about when trying to reassure Americans that you have things under control after a terrorist attack. That's kind of...
Wait, the Sugar Bowl is a thing?
Yes.
Yeah, apparently it's in New Orleans.
There's a whole set of bowl games. The Super Bowl is just the most well-known one.
Yeah, and those are like college games, right? Because I know the Rose Bowl is in Pasadena.
Yeah, there's college, and there are also like semi-pro and pro and NFL and like high-level pro, low-level pro, everything. So yeah. All right, and everything is freezing on here, so I can't see any new. Oh, there is a new.
It's
chat.
a shame we don't get to do a news show like right about now, considering we missed it on Tuesday, and then a whole bunch of shit happened on Wednesday.
But we'll have a new show coming up on Tuesday, and I have made one suggestion that is probably not going to make it because so much other stuff has happened, but. Breitbart just remember we did a show not too long ago about how common abortion has become in the United States, and I read about the fact that women have all kinds of birth control available, and most abortion doesn't happen because of birth control failures. It happens because of failure to use birth control, and there's a million of them last year, and it's essentially 1 in 4 deaths here in the U.S. was a baby being aborted, and that's the leading cause of death here and everything, and how really I guess you can say it's one of the few things that we've reported on that has upset me on the level that it has had me upset at that time, and I'm still pissed as fuck about it. Like, I know last year was not the only year that was the leading cause of death. Like, we're slowly killing our country with that, right? Breitbart just published an article stating that it's the leading cause of death in the world.
Wow.
Worldwide, top cause of death is being aborted. Just blew my mind. I thought maybe there would be some other countries somewhere where women were better than that, but I guess not. So I'm a little demoralized right now, but I did put that in because it needs to be discussed, but that's not what we came here to talk about. And we're not here to talk about the draft either, and we don't have a restaurant, and nobody here is named Alice, so y'all can get that out of your heads if you're familiar. In the meantime, we already have a super chat. Sierra de Flora gave us $5 and said, "Hello, we've been trying to reach you about your Badger Mobile's extended warranty." So now I have a story for you. We have 4 vehicles. 3 of them currently do not work, which is how we can afford to have 4 vehicles, because we buy junkers. And we fix them up and drive them until it becomes more expensive to continue to fix it than it is to trash it and buy another junker. It's a lot cheaper than paying a lease, and also I'm learning all kinds of neat new things because of it. I mean, I've gotten to, it's a neat thing to get to do with my husband. Right? We've replaced tie rods together. We've done brakes a gazillion times. I actually put the brake line under the van that I'm driving now, because we don't need. At that time, I was thinner than I am now, and I could get underneath it without actually jacking it up. So I could just crawl under there and do it. But yeah. So we do that, right? So I get a call. At the time that I got this call, our newest vehicle that we owned was like 15 years old. And our oldest one, if it was in decent shape, could have been considered like classic or antique or something. Not like super antique, but we probably could have fixed it up and taken it to car shows, because it was 25 years old. And that one actually fell apart. One of the wheels fell off. But in any case, I get this call about the extended warranty on my vehicle, and I was like, "Oh, really? Which one?" And she didn't ask that. She's like, "Well, can you tell me the make and model of your vehicle?" And I was like, "Which one? Which one are you calling about?" Because I knew it was fake. I figured I'd just torture this person a little bit. Which vehicle? We have 4. And she stopped for a minute. She's like, "You have 4. Yes, that's what I said. Which vehicle are you calling about? And this continues for about 5 minutes where she keeps trying to get the information on one of my vehicles so she can tell me it's that one. And I keep saying, I don't know the make and model until I know which vehicle you're talking about. And finally she hung up on me, which is when you call somebody in the United States, it's considered phone harassment if you call them and then you hang up on them in the middle of the conversation. So that was fun. But I end up screwing around with them just because I can do that. And so there you go. If you get one of those if you get one of those extended warranty people, try that. Which vehicle are you talking about? We have 4. Tell me which one. Well, you should know the make and model. You're the one calling about the vehicle. Eventually they will hang up on you. So, but
I'm sat here wondering where the hell you have the space for 4 vehicles, and then I remember, oh yeah, you guys have land. You guys have land over there. You don't have to live in a postage stamps.
We actually live
plot of land
right next
like we
to
have to live in
parking lot. So,
but this will all change when you get the 1 million Indians, folks. Sorry to bring that up.
There we go. That's actually not that many. Believe it or not. Do you know how many there are in India?
Yeah. This is your future, folks.
Yeah.
These volcanoes of human reproduction are going to continue spewing their lava into our countries.
Well, I really can't complain much. You remember me telling you guys about that time I was almost killed by a mosquito bite?
Yeah.
Okay. The doctor at the hospital that gave me my diagnosis and worked pretty tirelessly to keep me from dying was Indian. So she that was in 1980, the winter of 84/85, and she stayed beyond her usual shift and everything because of my case. So, like, I try not to generalize. Not everybody from any particular country is great like that, and not everybody from any particular country is bad. Like, I certainly wouldn't lump her in with all the women in India that make false allegations of sexual violence and dowry violations and stuff, because there's a lot of them, but they would certainly not match up with her at all, and she wouldn't match up with them very well either. In fact, she probably wouldn't tolerate them very well. But similarly, when my dad was in the hospital during the end of his life, and he was trying to bargain over his kidney failure and everything, there was one doctor out of the entire medical staff that would actually listen to what he had to say and give him feedback and talk to him about it, and he was Indian. Everybody else just didn't have the patience. So for what it's worth, benefit of the doubt at my end. I'm a little biased in that direction. So
my username, funnily enough, is sort of styled after an Indian name.
Yeah.
Like Ramachandran or Ramanujan. And that's why I call myself a doctor, because I first came up with that word as in randomacam, as in a camera that records randos.
Yeah.
Randomers. And I came up with that, and then I thought, well, that kind of sounds like the name of a doctor, because in the UK, much like in the US, quite a lot of doctors are Indian, and they have those Indian-sounding names like Ramachandran and Ramanujan. So yeah, I had no particular point to make about that. It's just an interesting piece of trivia as to why I'm even called Dr. Random account.
That's just one of those things. Our experience here in the U.S. with immigration is that you get every aspect of another country's society when you open up and let people in. And so you have, if you're vetting for character and capabilities and, do we need what this person's bringing in and things like that, you get doctors or you get people who have skills that are in short supply in the U.S. and things like that. Or you get refugees that are trying to escape conditions in their own countries that are just absolutely inexcusable and things that we would never tolerate here, like we got from Cuba. But at the other end of it, you get leaders like Fidel Castro, who opened up his mental health institutes and his jails and started sending people as soon as he learned about the policy that, if you get 1 foot on the beach, you're in. Then he started sending everybody that he wanted to get rid of in the country. And so we got both ends. We got people that had the ingenuity to try to get out of there because it was a bad situation, and then we had the people that the country was trying to get rid of. And so we're probably going to see the same thing. I mean, we see the same thing coming across the southern border now, right? We see people that have the ingenuity to try to get out of a bad situation and into a better one. And then we also see literal demon-worshipping cartel members coming across, trafficking children. So with anything else, just with anything else, I'm going to take a wait and see approach. What happens, we can talk about later, what needs fixed and what doesn't, and so on. But I just hope they're better at vetting people coming through than the current administration, because the current administration isn't doing it at all. And speaking of the current administration, let me get the window that we're looking at out from behind OBS. I have this thing that happens when I'm trying to look at something on my computer where if I accidentally scroll my cursor, just like you can see, I think you can see my cursor moving. I don't know if it's showing or not. Yeah, it's showing. So if I accidentally go off the side here, sometimes it'll take the window that's behind, even though I'm not pushing a button, and it'll put it in the front. And then no matter what I do after that, it doesn't bring the original window back to the front. Like, why? And because I don't know anything about programming, I don't understand. So I just have to complain about it to y'all. So, last week we started talking about who's who in the Biden family. And the fact that there was such a broad spectrum of people involved and everything. But, we also kind of learned that the Biden family, the Bafia, is like the Jerry Springer guests of organized crime. Like, these people are idiots. Or at least they seem to be idiots. They're really kind of screwy. So how the hell did they actually get anything done? How the hell did they succeed? Well, they had some people help them along the way. And they brought in big guns. They didn't just have your average, you go down the street and hire an attorney for a few $100s an hour. They hired people who had a track record of getting shit done that most people can't get shit done, like things that people won't agree to. So this is one of them. Kevin Morris here. And some of the stuff they emphasized in the report, didn't really stick out to me as much as, and I know the bikini picture's in this, but it's not that bad. I don't think we'll get in trouble on YouTube for this. There's not a lot of other shots like that in this section, but Go down to the bottom here. All right, so this small print down at the bottom that you're not going to be able to read unless you increase the size of your window significantly says that the story they're talking about as to who he is. All right, Kevin Morris had just negotiated a landmark deal that set Hollywood buzzing, giving the creators of South Park, Matt Stone and Trey Parker, a precedent-setting 50% stake in the cartoon's success on the web and other emerging media. For Morris, an attorney and entertainment agent, this might have been the coup of a career, but he is already on to his next project, trying to build bridges between Hollywood and Silicon Valley. Though Morris's clients include the likes of Mike Judge, Minnie Driver, Mike Newell, and Matthew McConaughey, it is hard to imagine that there would have been much interest in his conference had he not just cut the South Park deal soon after his firm helped set up FunnyOrDie.com, an attention-getting comedy site created by Will Ferrell and Adam McKay. So, and that was from the New York Times in 2007. The thing that struck me about that, and this goes back to another Hannah story. When I was in school, when I was growing up, my dad worked for as a stringer for our local newspaper. We're not talking the New York Times by any stretch of the imagination. Like, when I worked for the newspaper, they had a circulation of about 3,500. So it was a small newspaper, small community. It served the county, but it wasn't that widespread, right? But what I learned in the course of working with that paper is when you produce anything, any kind of media for a publisher, for any kind of publisher, they want the lion's share of the profits. They want copyright. They want every control that they can have over it. If you don't have somebody to negotiate for you, it's the norm for publishers to take everything they can get and leave you with as little as they can pay you to produce for them. And in the case of stringers for a newspaper, generally speaking, you get paid a flat fee for each event you cover or each set of photographs you turn in for a specific news story or whatever. And after that, the pictures belong to the publication. You don't have copyright. You can't even reprint for people yourself. You can't sell copies. They don't allow that. And a lot of times you don't even own the equipment, right? You don't even use your own equipment. You use their equipment. And so it's really controlled. In our case, we had a different deal, and it was because my dad had them over a barrel, so to speak. They decided one year that they were no longer going to use stringers. They were just going to have the reporters take pictures. And a bunch of the stringers got together and decided that this was ridiculous. And so my dad and some other people involved started a newspaper. It was just a monthly tabloid, not a daily like that paper. But they outsold them in advertising because they covered exclusively local news. Everything from local school sports to, like, if there was a little old ladies garden club that met once a month and just talked about gardening and then had their own gardens and stuff, they would cover that. And they not only outsold them on advertising, but there were advertisers that only could afford to advertise in one paper, and they chose my dad's newspaper, his team, and not the newspaper he'd been a stringer for. And so they took their stringers back, they begged him to come back, and they offered him a deal that probably no stringer for a paper of that size has ever had, where he had full copyright for his images. His pay was significantly increased, and he was allowed to choose what he was covering and who would take pictures in his absence, if he was unable to do it, he was able to choose who would cover for him. And that's how I got started working for that paper. But you have to have something like that where your negotiation includes some sort of basically either you having them over a barrel or you having something so important to them that they can't afford to tell you no. And so what the Bidens hired was a guy who knew how to do that for everybody who hired him to represent them. And so I'm not necessarily going to read everything about this, but that gives you the idea of who this guy was. This is the guy, then, who came up with the media strategies for defending against rumors about the laptop from hell. There we go.
Like, it's tempting to remember Biden as this dementia patient who had no idea what was going on. But it's important not to forget that this guy was in government for 50 years or something.
Yeah, his whole career, his whole working career was in government. That's all he ever did.
He even bragged about how young he was when he was brought in to this machine. He's always been a cog in a machine. Like, the idea of a human being reduced to nothing but a cog in a machine could not be more acutely represented than in the likes of Joe Biden. He's I don't like to call anyone a bad person. I feel like that's needlessly reductive. But that's because the criteria for being a person is just existing. You know, it's all you have to do is exist on this earth as a human being, and you're being a person. But when it comes to Joe Biden, I have to question myself, because he's not just existing on this earth. He's unexisting. Everything around him, and that's that's so many politicians in a nutshell. But it's so much Joe Biden because he's been a cog in this system for so bloody long, for longer than anyone should really be allowed to. We talk about term limits and how, like, Mitch McConnell, given that he's glitching out every time he tries to talk, shouldn't be allowed to still be here. But Joe Biden's been here longer than anyone. Joe Biden's a good example of medical advances allowing someone to exist in politics for 50 years and 50 something years, whatever it is. And it's like this, like, if there's term limits on presidents, if there's term limits on prime ministers, there should be term limits on civil servants in general.
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't there? The fact that there isn't has led us to the likes of Joe fucking Biden. And yes, Joe Biden's only a couple of years older than Trump.
Yeah.
But Trump's not a politician. He's not a career politician. That's why he's so popular with populists.
Well, and he's what he's done. He's been accountable for it his whole life. Like, he's had where government officials, they print money when they shouldn't print money. They use debt And it's not even debt they have to pay off. It's debt that your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren have to pay off. Everything that Trump did was with money he either had to pay off or declare himself a failure over by declaring bankruptcy. He either had to lose a company or keep it afloat using earnings and credit that had to eventually be paid off with earnings. And it's a whole different ballgame from government. It probably makes government look really weird to him. I can't imagine going from that type of budgeting and running a business that way to dealing with a budget where you really don't have any accountability for how you inflate your spending, how you overspend. Like, there's no bankruptcy. Obviously, there is a possibility for a country to default on its debts, and it's really bad, or it can be, but it's not an immediate threat. It's not the kind of immediate threat that it is to you or me. You know, if we were in that situation, or I know not everybody's a business owner, but anybody that has a mortgage or a car loan or anything like that, things can be taken away from you if you don't stay within your budget. Joe Biden doesn't have that in his work history. And he's not been responsible for the idea that, like, if Trump loses a company, everyone that works for that company loses their job. Joe Biden has never had to deal with that. He's always been spending other people's money, and it's never been a situation. Upwards. Yeah, failing upwards. It's never been a situation where, if this goes south, I'm gonna have to explain to 100 to 1,000 people in this company that it's going under and they're not gonna have jobs anymore. And it's a whole, like I said, a whole different ballgame. Speaking of ball games, we did get a super chow from Meredith G, who gave us $5 and said, HBR Talk 336. For giggles, the U.S. has 36 college bowl games. The oldest are the Rose, Orange, Sugar, and Cotton. But we have the Peach Bowl, the Pop-Tart Bowl, the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. I forgot about that one. Just to name a few, if you're willing to sponsor it, they will name it after you. The bowl game that was supposed to happen on New Year's Day in New Orleans was the Sugar Bowl, but it was postponed for a day. Probably weather. I didn't, know for sure what was going on there, but there's been some weird weather, so...
It wasn't due to the terrorist thing?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That would do it. There has been some weird weather though. But yeah, it could have been because of that. It probably was because of that. Yeah. I've just seen threat after threat online of you're going to get a weird storm for this whole week. Like we've been threatened with ice storms. Not that the weatherman is a terrorist or anything like that. But he might be a farging ice hole.
Remember when it was just hurricanes that were given names, Christian names like Sarah or Ian?
Yeah.
Or shit like that.
Typhoons, or not typhoons, but tropical storms get names, and then some of them become hurricanes.
Yeah, like we never had this in Britain until recently, and nowadays when we get a storm, we call it Storm Ian or Storm Sarah or some shit, and this never seemed necessary. It's obviously only happened to make storms seem more ominous.
We can only do that with tropical storms, because if we did that with every storm we have in the U.S., we'd be cycling through the whole baby name book every year, and starting back over again at the beginning.
And whereas in Britain, every day it's a storm. Every fucking day. It's not quite a storm, but it rains fucking a lot in the UK.
It's like living in Washington State.
And I have to wonder if they're going to reach the point where they have to name every rainstorm. No.
You
call it. Every time it rains,
drop.
it's like, it's Rain Mike. It's Rain David. It's Rain Stephen. It's Rain.
It's Rain Men.
I was waiting for that.
Hallelujah.
I wasn't gonna do it. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we don't really get we don't do that with all of the storms here because like I said, we would run out of names. We'd have to start making up names. Like we'd have to start pulling names from what was it that we were talking about not this past Tuesday, but the after show the previous Tuesday. Baseball players from the old 8-bit baseball games. the English names that like those names, we have to start naming storms after them. But we would have Joseus Gonzalez, you know. But yeah, back to reality. So
reality is overrated. Okay.
I don't like this reality.
Something I forgot to do that I wanted to do before we got started on this. I want to remind everybody, we've been talking about Biden's long career. When I was in college, 1993-ish, a bill came under discussion that was... The whole discussion basically was about gang violence and drugs and burglaries and all the things that were taking place in the country as a result of the CIA seeding poor neighborhoods and minority neighborhoods, especially with crack. That conspiracy theory that totally never happened. I'm not wearing a tinfoil hat right now or anything. Like all of that, what that blossomed into, which at that time, that had actually made it to my small community. And I lived in farm country, so it was everywhere. There was this massive backlash against this phenomenon of drugs going through. Even though like the hippie generation had done the same thing with LSD and pot and stuff like that, those drugs they didn't result in the same behaviors necessarily on the same scale as you saw a lot of slackers, people maybe acting a little bit stupid. But people killed each other over their tennis shoes in the 90s. And, people were breaking into people's houses to get money to buy drugs that they couldn't live without. People were mugging people on the street in broad daylight for them. There were drive-by shootings and shootouts in the street, and children were getting killed. And so... the federal government's under pressure to address this thing that the federal government had not yet admitted to having caused.
Right.
And so there was this bill. There was actually a set of 3 bills, and there's only 2 of them that are incredibly memorable to me. One of them was just called the crime bill. Another was actually part of the crime bill. And that was the Violence Against Women Act. And both of them were massive attacks on your due process rights. Absolutely massive attacks. The right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty when accused of a violent crime. Right? The right to not be harassed by the police for being out in public, while maybe being too poor for the neighborhood you're in, or... being the wrong color, or being male after dark. There's a big one. Being male after dark became kind of sus at the time. And those were both written by Joe Biden. Thanks to Joe Biden, getting divorced while male is a dangerous prospect. Driving while male is a dangerous prospect. Walking down the street after dark while male is a dangerous prospect. Not just because somebody might commit a crime against you, but because the police might assume you guilty of one and treat you not as a suspect, but as a perpetrator, a known perpetrator. And then the court system might treat you as a known perpetrator. And the prosecutor might engage in process crimes and get away with it. If your accuser's a woman, she will engage in process crimes. I didn't say might there, did I? Will engage in and get away with it.
Yep.
Right? So that's the man that hired the nuclear weapon of fixers to cover for his son's drug crimes and everything else that he did. The man who decided that you don't have a right to due process because seeding poor neighborhoods with drugs resulted in the formation of a shitload of gangs.
Even a real person anymore. I mean, he is, and he deserves. I mean, he should go to jail for as long as a person can possibly go to jail. But at the same time, it's not going to happen, and we have to sort of figure out how we bring thisness into justice.
Mm-hmm.
Thisness. I just coined the term thisness. Because it's not Joe Biden. Joe Biden doesn't have a fucking clue what's going on. Mm-hmm. He's just there to initiate the thisness, and yeah, I'm sitting here thinking how to elaborate on what I just said, but I think I just said everything. It's this thing needs to happen because it's the current year. That's all it is.
Yep.
It's not even Marxism, folks. It's something far worse. That it just doesn't happen to have a philosopher attached to it. It's the idea that thisness should be adhered to. It's the current year, folks. You have to do what's being done in the current year because it's progress. We have to do the thing that is happening now.
Yep. I want you to imagine something.
Because it's happening now. It doesn't...
it is happening. It is happening now, and hopefully we can make it happen well enough to turn the country around. Hopefully. I'm not going to hold my breath, but I am going to hold out at least a little bit of hope. And I just want you to imagine something, all right? Picture back in the day. It's 1990, 91, 92, somewhere in there, right? And politicians are considering what to do about people shooting each other in the street for wearing the wrong color. And instead of deciding that they needed to take away everybody's due process rights, imagine some civil servant had been present among the politicians and brought up the idea, maybe we should look at the situation in the families in which this is happening. You know, how are these kids growing up? Where are their fathers? What are we doing to facilitate the breakup of families? And what could we do to stop participating in that and stop encouraging that? What if in maybe 1990, somewhere between 1990 and 1996, some wise individual had started working on policy to encourage people to raise their children in stable two-parent homes, over and above any other relationship the state might have with a family. And if they'd stuck to that for 30 years, how different would this country be today? And you would think, since a lot of these politicians in Washington are dads and moms, that they would figure that out. It seems pretty stupid that they didn't. And I just kind of, for years, I thought, how can they not know? How can they not realize they're making things worse? Not too long ago, I was listening to Dan Bongino. It was when he was talking about the failures of the Secret Service in the two publicly known assassination attempts against Trump. And he said something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember the exact words, but mistakes are mistakes. Mistakes happen, right? But habitual incompetence is deliberate. And I think that's probably true in politics too. So Joe Biden doesn't get a pass on this. He wrote laws and pushed to get them passed with the assistance of feminists that not only didn't help to encourage families to stay together, didn't help to encourage women to limit their baby making to within partnerships that were going to last, didn't change things in a way that would help protect fathers from losing access to their kids and encourage young men who become fathers when they weren't intending to be, to interact with their kids and parent their children. No, instead, he wrote laws that the law that became the blueprint for women to use in family court via false allegations for which they could not be held accountable, to undermine any father that wanted to parent his children even after a divorce, and to go after baby daddies, without them having any recourse. It's really pathetic. Like, unless you think of it as something that was deliberate, and then it's really insidious. But in any case, so this was the first person we were talking about here. They hired the biggest Hollywood fixer, or one of the biggest Hollywood fixers, one of the best strong-arm robbers of media, I guess you could say. And he managed to, for quite a while at least, because of the cooperation between the different types of media, the establishment within the different types of media, he managed to actually control the narrative for a bit. And here it says, one of the strategies which Morris employed, with the help of filmmakers Jason Kahn and Rob Bendler, oh dang it, I accidentally hit the right button. No, I don't want to print this. Involved infiltrating the set of the aforementioned biopic My Son Hunter in Serbia. Morris and his Confederates brazenly and repeatedly lied to the producer of the biopic, Phelim McAleer. Sorry. But But yeah, I will also show you, with regard to this guy, the spin that he came up with. So this is the source for this is the New York Post. So full disclosure, they're referred to as right wing, but they do promote a little bit of right wing feminism, but they don't like left wing feminism. So there's the background for this source. But here we go. Kevin Morris, the generous Los Angeles entertainment lawyer who loaned Hunter more than $2 million to pay off his tax debts, has launched a sensational public relations campaign to discredit the laptop and divert attention from its damning revelations of the Biden family's international influence peddling scheme. Morris, 58, has assembled a team of 30 lawyers and investigators to help his friend Hunter, 52, blunt the impact of the Delaware probe, according to CBS News. But leaks from inside the Morris camp and a hand-scrawled mind map he has shared with confidants show a chaotic disinformation project attempting to rewrite the story of the laptop's origins. So, the main reason I wanted to look at this news story is there's your map.
Wow.
Yeah. So they had a plan between for how the information needed to flow, and what had happened and where it needed to go. They had all figured out. It just looks like something a high school kid would draw.
Yeah.
And I love here they blacked this part out. Whatever this was, they decided not to do it. Or else that's the individual that told. But yeah. So the counter-narrative Morris is mounting on Hunter's behalf has nothing to do with the damning contents of the laptop, which have been repeatedly verified as authentic by multiple media organizations since the Post broke the story in October 2020. Instead, Hunter's team is attempting to sow confusion about how the laptop became public by denying that he abandoned his laptop in John Paul Mac Isaac's Delaware repair shop on April 12, 2019, and claiming his private information was somehow stolen, hacked, or cloned. So that's where Twitter came out with its hacked materials claims. And that's, the shutting down of the Post's account and all that was because of this. This is the guy that came up with that idea. Even though the chain of custody was proven and proved otherwise. Here we go. Mac Isaac came to legally own the MacBook 90 days after Hunter failed to reclaim or pay his $85 repair bill. And after finding Ukrainian material on the laptop that he thought was relevant to Donald Trump's impeachment trial, Mac Isaac handed over the computer to the FBI on December 9, 2019. And after that, the government had it. Of course, he also gave a copy of the contents to Rudy Giuliani because he was Trump's attorney. And Giuliani alerted the Post because he knew it was going to get buried. Actually, if you ever get a chance, Rudy Giuliani is still very, very much on the ball. He's a boomer. He talks like a boomer. He has the cadence of a boomer when he talks and everything. And so if you're young, it might be frustrating, but you should listen to at least one of his videos. You'll find that he's actually still a great lawyer. So, but that's I just wanted to point that out. He's the guy that came up with this, and yeah. So we aren't going to go back to that page. We'll go to the next page here, which while I was going through this, I opened up each page for a little while as a separate thing until I went through and just confirmed that this wasn't the section that had any of the nasty images. But yeah, as a result of this guy's actions, as a result of Morris's actions and his tactics, he actually ended up getting reported to the State Bar of California.
Good.
And it's because he had broken 3 rules at the very least. So there you go. We'll see what happens there. He may or may not be held accountable. It really just kind of depends on how whether the bar in California is actually, the bar association is actually corrupt, or whether they are a little more accountable. So we'll see. They may just be embarrassed enough by him that they'll have to do something, or they may have already not done something. Or they may have already done something. Oh, I didn't want to do. I do that every time. It's because of the way that this is. It doesn't act like a normal PDF report. So we've already looked a little bit at Devon Archer. Like, we already talked a little bit about his involvement with the Burisma thing, and also his visit to the White House when Biden was president, or Biden was vice president, kind of proving that Biden actually did know what was going on with his son's business. But we actually have 2 archers, so we can fight off a whole army with that many. Yeah. Archer was the vice chairman of finance for John Kerry's 2004 presidential campaign, where he teamed up with his college pal, Chris Hines, Kerry's stepson. The 2 of them used Secret Service protection as they traveled around the globe together, getting state-backed financing from communist and Soviet post-Soviet regimes. So they were really sort of doing the influence peddling quite a bit themselves. Maybe not as effectively as Hunter Biden, but they were still running the scam. And to the degree, at least in Archer's case, that Hines decided not to remain involved with him. And so, and we have, here we go. Yep. Hunter, Devon Archer, and Archer's son Lucas, who is now 12, told me that the visit was arranged by Hunter for Lucas, who was working on a model of the White House for a grade school assignment. Afterward, Lucas posted a picture on Instagram of himself shaking the vice president's hand. And then, of course, that's the picture that they had been asked to remove. Archer has since been convicted of securities fraud, which he perpetrated against the Oglala Sioux tribe at the same time of his West Wing meeting with Biden. The email is also the first documented meeting to date within the White House itself between Joe Biden and the Burisma boys, Hunter and Devon. The most egregious example is perhaps Adam Etness, a reporter with the New Yorker. In a September 23, 2020 tweet, no longer available, Etness insisted that the meeting between Joe and Devon and Luke Archer was for a school art project. From the looks of it, they supplied him with a brief video that advanced their narrative. Etness, of course, mindlessly amplified it. With this newfound evidence of Hunter's presence for what he published was an art project discussion, maybe Etness can admit that he was manipulated by the Bidens into covering for them. And this seems to be their MO, too. Like, oh, well, we're going to pretend this thing we're doing is about something else. we're going to stick with that narrative. We're going to shove it down everybody's throat, and we're going to hide information just enough that people with platforms will amplify it for us. They'll tell everybody else that they've seen evidence that what we're saying is true. And then, when it all falls apart, they look stupid. So then we have Eric Schwerin. And again, this goes back to the 90s. And again, this is still during Hunter Biden's scam artistry, right? So, in the late 1990s, when they were both at the Commerce Department, where Hunter was the executive director of e-commerce policy coordination. Very fancy title, even though he had zero experience in e-commerce. The partnership they forged in government bled into the so-called private sector, although their work after their stint in the executive branch was almost completely untethered to free markets. And this is something that's pretty typical with government workers, right? It's probably been easy to disguise Hunter Biden's influence peddling, because you don't necessarily have to have any expertise to get a position like that in government. You can know fuck all about what you're doing and be in charge of some project or some office full of people in government. And having had more opportunities to deal with government agencies and offices than I ever wanted in my entire life, sometimes all in the course of just a few months, I have encountered that over and over again. Hunter Bidens are everywhere throughout the government, throughout the bureaucracy. They are everywhere. And so it wouldn't be too hard for somebody like Joe Biden to insert his son into various areas of bureaucracy, because he wouldn't stick out like a sore thumb. Being incompetent wouldn't make him stick out like a sore thumb. It would make him the norm. Right? Being completely unskilled, being completely untrained, having no knowledge, having no experience, that's par for the course, yeah. Mm-hmm. Everybody does it, right? And half the people that he'd be working with would be related to other politicians, or they would be friends of other politicians' families.
Yuck.
If you or I wanted to get a job in that office, then they want, 2 college degrees and 47 references, and some of them would have to be at least somewhat connected to someone in politics that the people that were working in the office already were aligned with. But, if the daughter of a senator or the next door neighbor of a senator comes in with a recommendation, oh, well, you got the job. I don't have any experience. That's okay. No degree either. Oh, that's fine. We'll train you. Actually, all you have to do is sit your ass in that seat, and somebody will put papers in front of you, and you sign them, and you don't have to know or do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing you know, the department spent $500,000 on a study to find out how ketchup slides down a slanted table.
I hate that that's true.
Yep. So, this was Hunter Biden's babysitter. He curated guest lists for White House functions. He shared a bank account with Joe and paid Hunter's bills, negotiated this settlement and alimony for his divorce with his first wife, was deeply embedded, it says, in his personal life, was part of the Biden political machinery for 20 years, about 20 years. He can be seen sitting next to Joe Biden at campaign events. He was he received a job for this, and this is another one, and this goes back to that before we had the system we have now in government, where nobody can be fired because of the government employees' unions, and they just add more jobs every year so that, they can put new people in. There used to be something called the spoil system. So, 2016, Obama gets replaced by Trump. Under the spoil system, the overwhelming majority of the federal government bureaucracy would have been fired and replaced with new employees, because the next administration would get to pick all of them. Of course, at before the time that changed, the federal government was much smaller, but it was that way for quite some time before it was decided that this was bad for the country, and threw things into chaos, caused all sorts of problems, and that needed to change. And we ended up in the system that we have now. Problem is, now, if you get a government employee like Hunter Biden, or the hundreds of other Hunter Bidens that work in the federal bureaucracy, that doesn't know jack shit about their job, does nothing, and gets an upper middle class to lower wealthy income for it, or more, there's nothing you can do about it. Like, you're not going to see them get fired. They're not even going to face a limit to how long they can be in that position until they choose to retire. The state is stuck with them, and the people are stuck with them. So if politicians want to be able to reward people that help them in their campaigns by giving them government positions, they have to make the bureaucracy bigger every year. And that's what they've done ever since we got rid of the spoiled system. So, in any case, this lasted, right, until about the time of the accidental surrender of the laptop from hell. When all of a sudden, after Sherwin gets this great gig, right, this membership on the Commission for the Preservation of America's Heritage Abroad. What an inflated title that is, right? What are you? I am with the Society for the Preservation of the Skeet. Long story. I'm not going to tell it now. You'll have to look that one up. But by January 2019, Hunter was threatening Sherwin and their aide, Joan Mayer, with a lawsuit and non-disclosure agreement if Sherwin touched one dime of their fourth quarter distribution from Eudora Global, lest Sherwin lose his stake in their broker deal firm. So they had a falling out. Hunter and his babysitter stopped getting along. Then we have Jeff Cooper. Ran for Congress twice, didn't make it. Made a small fortune from asbestos litigation. I don't know. I don't know if millennials and Gen Z know a whole lot about asbestos. Used to be used as a fire retardant material in building construction. And so there were a shitload of buildings that were insulated with it. And then they found out that it could break down, get into the air system in the building, circulate in the air, get into people's lungs, and trigger mutations that would cause cancer. And so there was a lot of lung cancer from asbestos. So the lawsuits to a degree were legitimate, right? There was some failure to take the situation seriously by many construction companies, and also there were buildings that the owner of the building knew they had a problem and didn't do anything about it when they should have. My old junior high school had asbestos in the ceilings. It was only 2 stories, and it was a couple of times they had people come in and test it to see if the school needed to be shut down and the asbestos had to be removed. But it never had any problems during the time that the building existed. The building's gone now because they built a new school in that community, and like my high school's gone, my junior high school's gone. There's nothing there but a big open field. So at least the last time I was there, I don't think they built anything there. But I remember sitting in a classroom one day and seeing these guys come in hazmat suits and poke at the ceiling with sticks and looking at the teacher, and the teacher's like, you guys are safe, there's nothing to worry about. But yeah, when you saw, I think asbestos was the substance behind mesothelioma. It was one of those, Sierra de Flores says, my current job has asbestos in certain parts of the plant. There are warning signs in there saying, don't make dust. Yes. It's generally speaking, something has to go wrong with it. For it doesn't just like, I should rephrase the way I said it. It doesn't just like deteriorate out of thin air and or because it's exposed or something and start flying around and cause cancer. It's stuff like the buildings had water damage and it's gotten in and caused part of the insulation to fall apart, or part of the ceiling to fall apart, or there's some sort of impact the building is taking, or other types of damage that are taking place inside the building that are causing it to come out. And it's a lot of times, if it was in a ceiling, if the bits of the ceiling crumbled that had asbestos in it, that's what would get into your lungs. But it did, it kind of did break down and cause that. And yeah, Richard Beer points out it used to be in everything, and yes, it is mesothelioma that is the cancer. And there, I don't know if you remember, but about 10 years ago or so, there were ads on every channel about mesothelioma and class action lawsuits and stuff. So that's how this guy made his money, was suing for mesothelioma from asbestos from sick buildings, basically. Which there's been other lawsuits like that. There are times where people have had legit lawsuits, and then you get somebody files a class action, and you get a lot of people bandwagon onto it, where maybe they didn't get sick, or maybe they had other potential causes, but they blame a building, or maybe they never worked in a building with asbestos, but said they did, because, hey, I had mesothelioma, it must have been from asbestos. And what are you gonna call them liars? So when it's a big class action, they can't track down every case as easily. And the same kind of thing happened with OB-GYNs delivering babies and certain types of birth injuries that can happen because of genetics, or they can happen because of unpredictable things going wrong during the pregnancy or the birth. Things that at the time were not necessarily as easy to know as they are now. And there were class action lawsuits against physicians for specifically babies born with cerebral palsy. And it's easy to sue for something like that, because who doesn't have compassion for children born with a profound disability? And there were cases where doctors' medical errors caused brain damage that caused cerebral palsy. But there are also instances where nothing the doctor did caused the problem, and nothing the doctor could have done would have made it possible for him or her to predict the problem. And there wasn't anything that could have been done. But the doctor still got sued, and because the plaintiff was a very sympathetic case, they would end up with either a settlement or a judgment against the doctor, despite the doctor not being able to do anything in the situation differently. And so medical malpractice insurance skyrocketed as a result of that. And it wasn't just cerebral palsy. That's just the one that I remember, because I have friends when I was in high school, and I learned about this, who had cerebral palsy. And so it was like, well, I can understand why a jury would buy that. It would be hard to look at somebody with that struggle and tell them no. Like we're not going to give you the money. And especially a lot of people think, oh, it's coming from this nameless, faceless entity called an insurance company. Who cares? They're bad people anyway, right? Insurance, bad. Therefore, let them pay through the nose, right? But what ends up happening is, when I was born, I was delivered by a general practitioner, not an OB-GYN. And she was still practicing when I had my son. And I wanted her to deliver my baby, because she was somebody that I really trusted. Couldn't do it, because if she was an OB-GYN, she would have had one level of malpractice insurance for delivering babies. But because she was not an OB-GYN, she was just a general practitioner, even though she had, at that point, over 30 years of experience delivering babies, she would have had to spend 10 times as much on malpractice insurance, and she couldn't afford it. So I had to go to a different office, and as a result, ended up with an incompetent nurse who almost killed me. Because, very helpful. So I'm not really a big fan of class action lawsuits. That's why I didn't participate again in the one. I've had a couple of medications that there have been class action suits for because of damage that they did. One of them, if I hadn't had it, we never would have gotten my asthma under control, so I'm not suing anybody over that. I came out ahead. The other one, the FDA shouldn't have approved it. So, I would be happy to sue the FDA, but I'm not. I didn't want to sue the drug company at the time. But this guy made his money with that kind of lawsuit. And interestingly, so now that you know he made that money that way, there is, let me highlight this, Oh, that's right. I can't select the text. All right. So you can see where my little arrow is here, right here. He finagled his way into the inner Biden orbit by sending legal work to Beau Biden in the aughts, in the 80s. At that time, Joe Biden was conveniently, for Cooper and his partners, blocking asbestos litigation reform in the Senate. Joe made sure to pay back Beau's benefactor in more ways than one by hosting Cooper and his soon-to-be ex-wife for a state dinner at the White House with the South Korean president. Cooper was instrumental to Hunter's businesses and appeared to provide the acumen required to manage them, along with frequently sending wire transfers to Hunter. Cooper rode on Air Force Two when the pair tried to broker a deal with Carlos Slim, the world's then richest man. So, yeah, the guy who made his money shaking down defendants in asbestos litigation got together with the family of the guy who was holding up asbestos litigation reform. Surprise, surprise! It's the old Washington, D.C. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And this is, again, what God, I can't think of his name, referred to as the Delaware Way. Then we have Rob and Betsy Walker. So far, we've got mostly lawyers here. And it looks like it's going to continue. If I remember right, these guys are also lawyers. So this couple was associated with the Clintons. Husband and wife duo of Rob and Betsy Walker has been in the shadows of American public life for 3 decades. They have in their own way been loyal foot soldiers for both the Clinton and Biden political syndicates. Hailing from Arkansas, Rob worked on the Clinton campaign and in Bill's administration in the 90s, and Betsy worked as personal assistant to Jill Biden through 2014. The most accurate portrayal of Rob's role was described by Rob himself. I've generally been acting as a surrogate for Hunter around the country and abroad, pursuing opportunities, and I see myself continuing to do that. So he basically was like Hunter Biden's little clone running around doing what Hunter Biden was doing, where Hunter Biden couldn't be because he was someplace else doing the same thing. Aside from being Hunter's globe-trotting stand-in, Walker has traversed Latin America with Bill Clinton. Pilot Growth Equity, a firm owned in part by Walker, also invested heavily in a pandemic tracking company called Metabiota, the value of which has appreciated significantly since COVID surfaced. After her time working for Jill, Betsy ran a design business. And here we have... Let me see if I can... I don't think I can make this bigger. But I believe it's an itinerary. And here we go. Personal assistant for Jill Biden. Dr. Biden. And of course there's the receipts again. Hunter used Rob for facilitating payments, so similar usage again. Facilitating payments, including and especially illegal ones that Hunter did not want to be tied to directly. Rob's shell company received $6 million from a CCP-linked firm, State Energy HK Limited, 1 month after Joe left the vice presidency. A U.S. Senate report described it as such on February 23rd, 2017, and March 1, 2017. A Shanghai-based company called State Energy HK Limited sent 2 wires, each in the amount of $3 million to a bank account for Robinson Walker LLC. A suspicious activity report noted that it was unclear what the true purpose is behind these transactions and who the ultimate beneficiary is. In short, Hunter laundered money through Walker's bank account and emailed Walker days before a $3 million wire from YE. Not sure. From Ye's company hit Walker's account. But, because it's called State Energy, so I don't know where the YE comes from. Can you do another $20K to my account, please? And here's the email. Right here's where it says, can you do another 20 to my account, please? 20, and that's 20,000. And then he puts down what it's for in the response. Hi, Hunter. Per my previous email last week, just an update on a few bills that require immediate attention. And here we go with the... Oh, it's not what it's for. It's what Hunter needs to pay. Said, well, tuition, life insurance, and between the two, the total is over $16,000. So I guess that's why he needed the money. And of course, again, here we have the receipts. This was, if I understand right, this was Chase Bank that actually flagged this. So I can find it. According to Delaware records, a company named Robinson Walker LLC was formed on February 28, 2008, located at an address on V Street, Northwest Washington, D.C., received $6 million in wire transfers from CEFC China Energy affiliated company in a text exchange with Tony Bobulinski, who I don't know if you remember. Tony Bobulinski was the guy that exposed the Joe Biden is the big guy fact to everyone on, I believe he was on Fox News when he said that. So in a text exchange with Tony Bobulinski, a Rob Walker stated that he controls a single-person entity incorporated in Delaware called Robinson Walker LLC. Confidential document on file with the committees shows that the Arkansas address associated with John R. Walker, the managing director of Rosemont Seneca Advisors, and includes a Robinson Walker pilot growth. Further public lobbying registration filings show that in the past an individual named John Walker registered in association with lobbying work. The restraints for the lobbying work were two Hunter Biden-linked companies, Oldacre Biden and Bel Air LLP and Seneca Global Advisors LLC, as well as Robinson Walker LLC. So they sort of reuse a lot of like Rose, Seneca. I think when I was looking through the names of the companies, that the shell companies they had, there were a few like Old Acre and Old this and Acre that and Rosemont and Rosewood and like a lot of it basically stuff that sounds like it would be the name of a golf course in a movie like Caddyshack, or the name for a nursing home. They should all be called Shady Acres. And I'm thinking this is the last page I'm going to go over tonight, because again, this is some pretty dry ass stuff. But as we're going through this, I think you kind of get the picture here. We are looking at an organized system of people who handled the fucknut, because Hunter Biden is, if nothing else, a fucknut. Or you could call him a dipshit. Right? Like, so he had dipshit handlers. Right? We had problem eliminators. Like, basically legal hitmen. Legalese hitmen. Public relations advocates. Money launderers. And shell company managers. All from, again, the guy who thought you didn't need to due process rights if you're accused of violence against your girlfriend or your wife or of some sort of sexual misconduct. So we have Mel Monzak. It says current in this, but this is at the time that this was written. Obviously, everything has fallen apart since then. Just it hasn't been that long, but it's all falling apart now. For over 5 decades, Mel Monzak has been behind the scenes of. So we're talking, longer than a career, 2 careers, almost. Behind the scenes, the Biden political operation. Based on the contents of the Biden laptop, Mel was the most discreet mover and shaker. With a digital trail that Hunter should have envied. Monzak and Joe co-founded a law firm in Wilmington in the early 1970s, and he has been, since 1987, Joe's power of attorney. He also served as the treasurer for Joe's failed 2008 presidential campaign, which ended with multiple guilty pleas, hefty fines, and Monzak's admission of fraud to the Federal Election Commission. Monzak also served as treasurer for Beau Biden's Attorney General campaign, along with other campaign slush funds. Just want to remind you that, among other things, Joe Biden pled guilty or admitted. I don't know that he was actually that. This is a courtroom thing, but he had to admit because it was blatantly obvious at the time. He had to admit to plagiarism. As part of the set of things that he did wrong during the campaign, which actually was numerous, if I remember right. The back-scratching has gone both ways. Monzak received a shout-out during Joe's Presidential Medal of Freedom ceremony. He, along with his wife Anne, who is the fundraiser for Jewish groups, it doesn't say which one, so that might actually be the name of a organization, attended a state dinner at the White House in 2011 for the General Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party. Monzak's daughter, Nina, I've heard it pronounced both ways. I have a family member in my history whose name was pronounced Nina, but I've heard a lot of people say Nina. Worked at the Delaware Department of Justice when Beau Biden was the Attorney General of Delaware. His son, Judson, was an overt supporter of a Marxist organization called Black Lives Matter. Mel's niece, Alyssa Monzak, happens to be the current chief of staff in a division at the National Institutes of Health. So his family is kind of nepotistically put everywhere as payback for his services to the Biden family. Monzak's law firm is, or was, the registered agent for both Joe and Jill's S-Corps, and Ashley Biden's sweatshirt grift, livelihood. The Biden's S-Corps, which Monzak organized, shielded them from hundreds of thousands of dollars in income taxes. Monzak's firm also is the registered agent for the Robinson Walker LLC that we just mentioned, which is previously noted, received that $6 million from a CCP-linked entity less than 1 month after Joe ended his term as vice president. Point is, from the most sensitive and important matters, power of attorney and campaign treasurer for the Bidens, to the mundane insurance bookkeeper, Monzak was always there, but hardly mentioned until now. And they have, again, you've got the receipts. And here's a picture of him currently. Here you can see what he looked like when he was younger. I think. Yep. With Joe Biden and Beau Biden. So, just to make sure there's not more about him on the next page. Make a liar out of myself. Yeah. So, this is the part that I thought there was. Okay. So, just this little blurb here. A laptop confirmed the close relationship that Monzak shared with the entire clan. From wiring money to Hunter on Joe's behalf, Hunter responded, "Thanks, love you," to legal issues with the family's so-called charity, the Beau Biden Foundation for the Protection of Children. Monzak also managed trusts. Yeah, protection of children. We learned that was kind of a farce.
Yeah, it's almost like they do that shit so they can get away with the crappy criminal fucking nasty things.
I would like to start the Hannah Wallen Foundation for the Protection of Feminism. We're going to put all of the feminism in this closet over here for its own safety and lock it in.
Yes.
Yeah. Shit. Yeah. Based in the Cook Islands with David Walsh. And David Walsh the First, another former Biden law partner. So, we're not going to get into the next individual. But again, as you can see, the way that the Biden family attempted to keep their fingers clean was by having other people do their dirty work. Other people manage their business. Other people do the ideas, come up with the ideas. Here's how we're going to solve this problem, right? And handle the legal issues. If you're a moron, but you still want to have an organized crime family, you have to have people that are smarter than you do all the work. So I guess that's the way that works. And that is pretty much what Joe Biden and his family did. We'll see more about this. We may take a break from this next week. We may not, just depending on... I think I've found some other things that we might have to look at. I might want to look a little bit more in depth about into the worldwide baby killing phenomenon. Don't really want to. It's not exactly a happy subject, but it may be something that really needs to be discussed because, I mean, holy hell. The leading cause of death worldwide is being aborted. So much for the fair sex. But if I don't prepare something for that discussion, then we will continue discussing this dismal subject. Sorry, guys. And I will get to the point, which is the actual crimes and how they relate to the Biden corruption with regard to Ukraine. And we're probably ultimately going to go back in time a little bit and re-examine Obama's actions in Ukraine and compare that, or at least relate that to what's going on today, and how we almost risked a world war that would make that one of the next leading causes of death for at least the young men in some countries being sent to war for no good reason. So, but fortunately, we may have averted that with this last election. We should still know what almost happened, and it's something that has to be taken seriously. So, this is one of the reasons why women shouldn't vote. But since women do vote, and since women's suffrage is probably not going to end, all men should vote. Because there's no way that you can protect yourselves from women who don't understand what they're voting for, or women who don't care what they're voting for, unless you also have your say.
At the point, nobody should vote. Voting is fake and gay.
But since women are voting, you gotta counter their votes. Like that's the way that works. Otherwise, if only the people that are voting against you vote, and you do not fight back with your vote, they will win. And whatever it is they're trying to take away from you, they'll get, and you'll lose. And that's why they're so mad about this last election. Like the meltdowns of young women in regard to the last election, and some of the older women too. I hate to say it, but as a Trump supporter, those have been quite delicious to me. But it's also very sad that women are that dumb, like that they would record themselves doing that and put it out there for the whole public to see. This is how I behave when I'm angry. I would not want anything recording me when I have if I haven't had a meltdown in a few decades. I learned not to do that when I grew up, but I wouldn't want anybody to see what it used to look like either. I wouldn't even want anybody to see me have a Karen moment. Not our Karen, but meme Karen. Like, I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want people to think of me that way. And these women recorded it and put it on the internet and hoped that it would go viral, and some of them did. What's wrong with you guys? But yeah, that's what you're fighting against, right? Women who would see all this information, not care about it, turn a blind eye, put their blinders on, and say, but he'll defend abortion. And therefore, it's okay if I put this corrupt nut job that is part of the most... I don't want to say hillbilly, because my family's kind of hillbilly in some sections. And none of them would do anything this dumb. But the most redneck, hilljack, I don't know, dipshit mafia I have ever seen in charge of the country and in charge of the military, in charge of foreign policy, immigration, the national budget. Like, it makes me sick. And I'm really glad that men turned out and pretty much put the kibosh to that. And I hope, even if future elections don't all go my way, I hope the trend continues. But with that, I think, I don't know if you guys have anything else to say on this.
I will hereby shake your hand.
There we go.
However it may manifest physically.
There we go. Well, hopefully you'll get a chance to shake my hand this month.
Yay.
So,
we'll see you at the inauguration.
Yeah.
Assuming we don't get terrorist attacked. It's looking ominous, but we're gonna go ahead and go ahead with it anyway.
Yeah, I am hoping that nothing will happen. Hopefully that, based on how things went the last time, nobody will be stupid enough to engage in any kind of violence, because all that had to happen last time was that people had to be accused. If somebody actually did it, I'm sure that the federal government would react much more harshly.
The federal government is what I'm worried about.
Yeah. I don't think that we'll see terrorism from the government. I think that they're going to go ahead and turn over the keys to the White House and try all the same shit that they tried the last time. So, we'll see what happens. But in any case, we'll definitely... My intention, anyway, is to be there. So, further updates on that in the upcoming weeks. Whether there's going to be anything else going on, any chance to, say hi and stuff like that. But in the meantime, thanks to everybody for digging through this pile of shit with me, and knowing that it's going to continue. And eventually we will get through it. We'll understand a little bit more about the criminal organization that was running the government for the last 4 years. And again, we're going to go back and relate that to the current war in Ukraine and the history that led to that war. And when we get out of this, we're going to do a couple of blips into some other territory that has nothing to do with this stuff. Then we're going to dig back into some more history. So, like I said last time, we're going to end up in the Middle East. So, but that's probably, it's probably going to be a couple of months before we get there. With that, thanks y'all, and good night.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.